They make no sound, but I feel the earth vibrate beneath my feet, a sinister tremor that heralds death. 700 hungry shadows, colder than a 71-degree night, surround the cabin where my blind granddaughter sleeps, oblivious to the approaching terror. The frozen air tears at my lungs with each desperate breath. "Lyra!" I scream in silence, my voice lost in the vacuum of my own deafness. Like a huntress who cannot hear the pack's howl, trapped between the wild fury of YAKUT and the innocence I swore to protect, I would have to find a way to fight, or the eternal ice would swallow the last sparks of our hope. Anya clenched her fists, her skin wrinkled and hardened by time, but her heart pulsed with the strength of a young mother. There was no time for despair. Lyra depended on her. The darkness outside was a treacherous cloak, and the cold, a constant enemy, seemed to intensify with the predator's presence. She moved with the silent agility that only years of hunting and her innate deafness could bestow. Each step was measured, each movement a dance with danger. In the small cabin, the flickering light of an oil lamp cast long, dancing shadows. Lyra slept soundly in her fur bed, a small mound of warmth and innocence. Anya knelt beside her, feeling the soft warmth of her granddaughter's breath on her hand. Lyra's lips were slightly parted, and an almost imperceptible smile played on her face. To Anya, that smile was the purest melody, a song she felt in her soul, even without hearing it. It was for Lyra that she would face 700 wolves, the very fury of the tundra. With a last tender touch to her granddaughter's face, Anya rose. Her eyes, accustomed to the dim light, swept across the cabin. The bow, made of birchwood and reindeer sinew, hung on the wall, a faithful companion of countless hunts. The arrows, with sharp obsidian arrowheads and eagle feathers for stability, were in her quiver. She picked them up, feeling their familiar and comforting weight. But it wouldn't be just the arrows that would help her. Ancestral wisdom, passed down from generation to generation, was her most potent weapon. Anya recalled her grandmother's teachings, the ancient trapping techniques that used the environment itself against the enemy. These weren't traps to kill, but to disorient, to frighten, to make the predators retreat. She would need every bit of her intelligence, every fiber of her courage. The scent of the wolves, a wild and penetrating odor, already permeated the rarefied air of the cabin, even through the thick wooden door. They were close. The earth vibrated with a more intense frequency now, a constant hum beneath her feet, like a distant, threatening drum. She cautiously opened the door, peering into the Arctic night. The moon, a pale and solitary disk, illuminated the frozen landscape, transforming the snow into a shimmering silver sea. The dark silhouettes of the wolves were visible in the distance, moving like ghosts among the village tents, their eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. The cattle, huddled in the central enclosure, were restless. Anya felt the animals' fear, a vibration of panic that echoed in her own chest. The village elders, men and women with faces marked by time, had already gathered, their faces pale and their eyes full of apprehension. They looked at her with a mixture of respect and despair. They knew Anya was their only hope. Her deafness, which for many would be a curse, was now a blessing, allowing her unwavering concentration, a keen perception that transcended common senses. She didn't hear the howl, but she felt the intent, the hunger, the savagery in every tremor of the ground, in every movement of the shadows. With a firm nod, Anya indicated that they should stay inside the cabins, protecting the children and the most vulnerable. She would do what needed to be done. The 70-degree cold bit at her exposed skin, but she barely felt it. Her focus was on the wolves, on the deadly dance about to begin. Her love for Lyra was her shield, her truest arrow, propelling her into the frozen tundra where the silent battle for the survival of the village and her family was about to be fought. Anya stepped out of the cabin, and the icy air, sharp as obsidian blades, enveloped her. The intense 70 centimeters cold was a constant presence, but today it seemed an ally, a veil that would help conceal her movements. The pale moon bathed the tundra in a silvery glow, revealing the dark, restless silhouettes of the wolves. They moved with strange coordination, a sea of hungry shadows slowly approaching the cattle enclosure. Anya felt the earth's vibration beneath her feet intensify, an echo of the animal's panic and the predator's wild determination. Her eyes, sharpened by necessity, swept the landscape, searching for patterns, weaknesses, the most likely route of attack. With the agility of a snow spirit, Anya began her silent dance. She didn't run, but glided, her lean, strong body almost invisible against the pristine white. First, she moved to the strategic points her grandmother had taught her, places where the wind howled peculiarly or where snow formed small depressions. There, she began to set her ancestral traps. These were not traps of death, but of deception. Using dry branches and stones, she created unstable tripods that, if touched, would knock down small piles of snow and ice, producing a dry, unexpected noise for the wolves, a sound that would make them hesitate, breaking their concentration. Inside the cabins, the elders and women, their faces contorted with anxiety, gazed into the darkness. They couldn't see Anya, but they felt the tension in the air, a premonition that chilled the soul. Some embraced, others prayed in silence, their eyes fixed on the door, waiting for a sign, a sound that would indicate what was happening outside. Lyra, in her deep sleep, turned in bed, a soft sigh escaping her lips. Her granddaughter's unconsciousness was, for Anya, the most painful and the most powerful of motivations. She needed Lyra to continue dreaming in peace. Anya moved to the outermost perimeter, where the pack began to disperse, seeking entry points. The scent of the wolves was now overwhelming, a mix of earth, fur, and a primordial hunger that made her stomach churn. But she was not intimidated. With quick, experienced hands, she scattered dried herbs and resins with strong, unpleasant smells, gathered in summer and saved for emergencies like this. The aroma, though it didn't affect her, was a natural repellent, an invisible barrier that would confuse the predator's keen senses, making them veer away. A bolder group of wolves advanced toward one of the snow traps. Anya felt the vibration of their heavy steps even before seeing them. At the exact moment, one of them touched the branch, and the small pile of snow collapsed with a dull thud. The wolves recoiled, surprised, their eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and caution. It wasn't a physical danger, but an unexpected interruption, a mystery in the night silence that made them hesitate. Anya smiled slightly, a tense and determined smile. The ancestral wisdom was working. She knew the battle was just beginning. 700 wolves would not be easily deterred. But every small retreat, every moment of hesitation she managed to instigate was a victory. Her love for Lyra and her sense of duty to her village fueled every fiber of her being, transforming her body into an instrument of protection. She pulled an arrow from her quiver, feeling the sharp tip against her fingertip, ready for the next phase of her silent defense, driven by a force that transcended cold and fear. Anya felt the arrow's tip in her fingers, cold and familiar. The wolves, though momentarily surprised by the snow traps and strange scent, were not retreating. The vibration beneath her feet grew more intense, a rising murmur of hurried paws and moving bodies. She realized the pack was reorganizing, seeking a new, more aggressive approach. Her eyes swept the landscape, fixing on a larger group moving toward the most vulnerable point of the cattle enclosure, where the wood seemed older and more fragile. With iron determination, Anya raised her bow. It wasn't to wound, but to warn. She aimed at a spot on the ground, ahead of the lead wolf, and released the arrow. The projectile hissed in the icy air, embedding itself in the snow. The sound, made the wolf stop abruptly, sniffing the air. Other wolves hesitated, their movements cautious. Anya repeated the gesture, firing 2 more arrows at strategic points, creating an invisible line of warning. Inside the main cabin, old Katerina, with trembling hands, held a wooden bead rosary. Her tear-filled eyes were fixed on the door, imagining what Anya faced. She felt the cold of fear. "May the spirits of the tundra protect her," she whispered, her voice hoarse with apprehension. Beside her, young Boris, with 16 winters, squeezed his mother's hand. He wanted to help, but knew Anya had ordered them to stay. Impotence was a heavy burden. Anya, oblivious to their fears, moved with ancestral precision. No time for fear. With each arrow fired, each trap adjusted, she felt Lyra's presence in her heart, an inextinguishable flame. She knew the wolves were intelligent, and her strategy needed to go beyond simple deterrence. She needed to create an illusion of danger, a psychological barrier that would make them question the reward of attacking the village. She approached dry kindling. Quickly, she lit a bundle of branches with flint and steel. The flame flickered, rising into the frozen air. Fire, strange and frightening to the wolves, was a powerful tool. She scattered small fires at strategic points around the enclosure, creating a barrier of light and heat. The wolves, previously confident, now displayed confusion. Their eyes gleamed in the darkness, but without ferocity. They backed away from the fire, growling softly, their paws digging into the snow in frustration. The smell of smoke mingled with the scent of herbs, creating a sensory cacophony that disoriented them. Anya watched, body tense, ready for action. She knew the fire was a temporary solution, but it bought precious time. Her gaze returned to the cabin where Lyra slept, the flickering light still visible. The image of Lyra, serene, filled Anya with a new wave of strength. She wasn't just protecting the cattle, she was protecting the future, innocence, the very essence of her family and her village. With her bow in hand, she prepared for the next stage, feeling the icy wind on her face, but the warmth of love in her chest, a force more powerful than any cold. Anya knew that fire, though intimidating, wouldn't contain them. The wolves, hungry and numerous, were persistent. She felt the ground vibrate. The pack was dividing, groups trying to flank the fire, others retreating. The predator's ancestral intelligence was sharp. Anya needed to be more cunning. Her eyes caught every shadow, every movement in the silvery snow. She moved with urgency, her agile body gliding between the tents, avoiding the illuminated areas. Her plan, to create a series of distractions and sensory traps, exploiting the wolves' weaknesses. Near frozen bushes, Anya dug into the compacted snow, her gloved hands working quickly with mastery. Shallow pits disguised with branches and loose snow. Inside, small stones and pieces of ice that, when stepped on, would roll and make a dry sound. She would feel the reverberation in the ground. As she worked, the image of Lyra sleeping was a beacon in her mind. The thought of her blind, vulnerable, and precious granddaughter was a constant impulse, an energy that defied tiredness and cold. Anya felt the weight of the village, the silent hope of the elders. She could not fail. With every stone, every disguised branch, she infused her love and determination. A group of wolves, drawn by the scent of the cattle, tried to bypass the flames, advancing along one of the paths Anya had prepared. She felt the impact. One, then another, stumbled into the stone and ice traps. They stopped abruptly, sniffing the air, confused by the noises and instability. It wasn't a physical threat, but a disruption in their hunting pattern, an anomaly that made them hesitate. The pack, accustomed to dominating, was challenged by an invisible and silent enemy. Inside the main cabin, Boris, the young man of 16 winters, squeezed his mother's hand. He felt new vibrations in the ground, more spaced out, erratic. "They're confused, Mother," he whispered, eyes wide. Katerina nodded, a tear tracing her cheek. "Anya." "She is the strength of the tundra," she replied, her voice choked. Hope blossomed, timid but real, in the hearts of the villagers. Anya, sensing their hesitation, knew she needed to intensify the psychological pressure. She moved to the edge of the birch forest, where the wind was strongest. There, she used flexible branches and leather strips to create rudimentary scarecrows. They weren't meant to look human, but to sway and emit strange sounds with the wind, mimicking the rustling of large wings or the snapping of branches. She wouldn't hear them, but she knew the wolves, with their keen hearing, would be disturbed by this new and inexplicable cacophony. The icy air whipped her face, but Anya barely felt pain. Her mind was focused, every sense sharpened. The pack was in indecision, divided between hunger and growing confusion. The fire, the snow traps, the strange scents, the arrows on the ground, and the ghostly sounds from the forest, all combined to create an environment of uncertainty and perceived danger. Anya, the deaf huntress, used the environment and ancestral wisdom to weave an invisible web of deterrence. Her love for Lyra was the strongest thread, guiding every movement, every decision in her silent battle against the fury of the tundra. Anya, despite the success of her initial tactics, felt the urgency that the pack wouldn't remain confused for long. Hunger was a powerful force, and the wolves' intelligence, forged in generations of survival in the relentless tundra, would soon overcome their hesitation. She needed a more decisive blow, something that would make them abandon the village entirely. Her eyes, which saw the world with a clarity that transcended sound, fixed on a small frozen stream, a place her grandmother always said was the heart of the earth's voice. With calculated movements, Anya headed there. The stream, covered by a thick layer of ice, was a strategic point. She knew that the vibration of many bodies running over it would create a unique resonance, a message the earth would send. But she needed to amplify that message. With her hunting knife, she began to tap rhythmically on the ice, creating small fissures that wouldn't break it, but would make it more sensitive to vibrations. Each tap was an echo of her heart, a silent appeal to the ancestral spirits. Inside the main cabin, Boris, the young man of 16 winters, felt a subtle change in the ground. It was no longer the erratic vibrations of confused wolves, but a constant rhythm, almost like a distant heartbeat. He looked at Katerina, who also seemed to feel something. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. "It's Anya," Katerina whispered, a thread of hope in her voice. "She is speaking to the earth." The other villagers, though they didn't understand the exact nature of the vibration, felt the presence of a protective force, an energy that dissipated the panic. Anya, bent over the ice, felt the tension in her muscles, the cold penetrating her gloves. But the image of Lyra, sleeping peacefully, was a shield against discomfort. She imagined her granddaughter's smile, the sweetness of her face. It was for that smile that she defied the cold, hunger, and danger. Her deafness, which isolated her from the world's sound, allowed her a deeper connection with vibrations, with the silent essence of life and earth. She didn't hear the wolves howl, but she felt their presence, their growing frustration. The pack, now more cautious, tried to regroup. Some wolves, the younger and more impatient ones, tried to approach the enclosure again, ignoring the snow traps and scents. But as they stepped onto the stream area, the ice's vibration, amplified by Anya's fissures, resonated beneath their paws. It wasn't pain, but a strange and disturbing sensation, as if the earth itself were warning them. They recoiled abruptly, their tails between their legs, a sign of fear and confusion. Anya watched, her heart pounding. It was what she expected. Ancestral wisdom spoke of how animals respected the earth's signs, the silent messages that guided their lives. She needed to reinforce that message. Using a piece of reindeer bone, she began to scratch ancient symbols into the ice, drawings that represented protection and unbreakable boundaries. They weren't just scratches, they were silent prayers, invocations of a force that transcended the physical. The older wolves, the pack leaders, seemed perplexed. They sniffed the air, looked at the ice, at the fire still burning in some spots, at the scarecrows swaying in the forest. The village, which once seemed easy prey, was now a labyrinth of invisible and incomprehensible dangers. With each attempt to approach, a new obstacle arose, a new sensation of discomfort. Hunger still drove them, but the instinct of self-preservation began to speak louder. Anya felt the change in the vibration pattern. The pack was no longer advancing with the same ferocity. There was a palpable hesitation, an uncertainty that was beginning to turn into discouragement. She knew she was getting close. She needed one more push, a final sign that the village wasn't worth the risk. Her gaze turned to the sky, where the pale moon began to give way to the first grey tones of dawn. The longest night was coming to an end, and with it the hope of a new day for Lyra and for everyone. Anya, her body exhausted but her spirit unyielding, moved to the center of the cattle enclosure. There she knelt, her gloved fingers touching the frozen ground. In a gesture of deep reverence, she scooped up a handful of snow and raised it to the sky, offering a silent prayer to the spirits of the tundra, thanking them for strength and wisdom. It was an act of faith, an acknowledgement that she was not alone, that the ancestors guided her. The first rays of sun, timid and cold, began to paint the horizon a pale pink. The light revealed the extent of Anya's silent battle. The wolves, now fully visible, seemed smaller, their ferocity diminished by daylight and by the web of deterrence Anya had woven. They slowly retreated, one by one, their silhouettes blending into the distant landscape, their howls, which Anya would never hear, transformed into a murmur of defeat. The village was saved. The village was saved. Anya, with a sigh of gratitude, watched the rising sun tint the sky, revealing the tundra, scarred by the night of terror. The wolves were now distant specks, their silhouettes diminishing until they disappeared. The exhaustion, which she had held at bay with adrenaline and love, hit her hard. Her legs trembled, and a deep cold, born of weariness, coursed through her bones. Slowly the cabin doors opened. The villagers emerged, their faces marked by anxiety, but now illuminated by relief. Katerina was the first to approach Anya, her steps slow in the snow. Her red-rimmed eyes met Anya's, and a trembling smile formed. She lightly touched Anya's shoulder, a gesture of respect and gratitude. Boris followed close behind, pale, his eyes full of admiration, bowing respectfully. Anya, unable to hear, felt the wave of emotion. She saw the smiles, tears of relief, nods. It was a silent symphony of gratitude that warmed her heart. But as she swept her gaze across the village, she realized the victory had a price. The ground around the enclosure was trampled, the snow traps undone, herbs scattered, fires extinguished, leaving dark stains. More concerning, the cattle, though safe, were visibly shaken. Some young animals trembled uncontrollably, their eyes wide. Others were huddled together, refusing to move, and the scent of panic still lingered. Anya felt the vibration of fear in the animals, a resonance that struck her. She approached a reindeer, touching its flank. The animal shivered but didn't flee, merely looking at her with a heartbreaking sadness. Anya knew the night had been a battle against the wolves, but dawn revealed a new struggle, restoring the calm and health of her herd, the basis of their survival. The village had been saved from immediate fury, but the threat to their subsistence persisted, silent and insidious. The intense cold and prolonged terror had taken their toll. Some fragile calves appeared weak, their noses running, a worrying sign of illness. As the villagers inspected the cattle, a murmur of concern spread. It wasn't the despair of the night, but a somber, apprehension. Anya felt the change in the atmosphere, the transition from relief to new worry. She saw Katerina point to a calf that could barely stand, and the old elder's face contort in anguish. Boris, with a somber look, began to gather the animals, trying to calm them, but the task seemed monumental. Anya realized that the wolves, though defeated, had left a legacy of vulnerability. The village, united against external danger, now faced an internal challenge: the fragility of life in the relentless wilderness. Anya's victory was undeniable, but not the end. It was the beginning of a new phase, where resilience would be tested. Her love for Lyra, which had propelled her, now guided her toward this unexpected obstacle. She needed to heal the cattle and the spirit of the village. The task seemed as arduous as facing 700 wolves, but Anya knew there was no choice. Life in the tundra demanded constant struggle, and she was ready. Anya, her eyes fixed on the fragile calves, felt the urgency. The threat of the wolves had receded, but the fight for the animals and the village's lives was far from over. She approached the calf Katerina had pointed to, a trembling body, matted fur, and dull eyes. The animal's breathing was shallow and rapid. A faint vibration Anya felt through the ground and her gloved hands as she touched its flank. Terror settled in her heart. Katerina, with a heavy sigh, knelt beside Anya, her eyes brimming with worry. "They are too weak, Anya. The fear has frozen them from within," she whispered, her voice choked. Boris, joining them, tried to move the less affected animals to a more sheltered area, but their slowness and despondency were evident. Anya, without hearing the words, understood the anguish in their faces and body language. She nodded, a deep furrow in her brow, and inspected the calf carefully. Her fingers, accustomed to feeling the smallest nuances of nature, traced the animal's body, searching for signs of abnormal warmth or cold. She noticed the dryness of its muzzle, the paleness of its gums. With a firm but gentle gesture, she indicated to Katerina that they needed warm water and certain herbs from her cabin, known for their calming and healing properties. Katerina, understanding the silent message, rose, her steps gaining new purpose. Boris, seeing Anya's determination, felt a glimmer of hope. If anyone could reverse the situation, it would be her. As Katerina walked away, Anya gently rubbed the calf's body with her hands, trying to restore circulation and warm the small body. She closed her eyes for a moment, concentrating on the vibrations of life still pulsing within the animal, a silent prayer to the spirits of healing. The image of Lyra, sleeping in her cabin, was the fuel for her resilience. Her granddaughter needed a future, and that future depended on the strength and health of the herd. The village, in turn, depended on her ability to lead, even through unexpected challenges. The other villagers, seeing Anya in action, began to mobilize. Older women brought fur blankets to wrap the weaker calves. Young men began to reinforce the enclosure, a task that once seemed meaningless, but now represented the rebuilding of security. The murmur of concern mingled with the sound of activity, an echo of hope spreading through the icy air. Anya felt the change in the atmosphere, the collective energy beginning to form. She knew that healing would come not only from her hands, but from the unity of all, from unwavering faith in life and the ability to overcome. The tundra was relentless, but humanity, when united, was even stronger. Katerina returned with a container of warm water and a small leather pouch containing the dried herbs. Anya took the herbs, crushing them between her fingers, releasing their earthy aroma. She mixed them into the water, creating an infusion to be administered to the calves. Carefully, Katerina helped Anya hold the calf's head, while Anya, with a wooden spoon, offered the drink. It was a gesture of patience and faith. Life in the tundra taught that every small action, every drop of hope counted. The village, though shaken, began to rise again, propelled by the silent strength of its huntress. Anya, with infinite patience, offered the wooden spoon to the calf. The small animal, its head resting on Katerina's shoulder, swallowed with difficulty, a tremor running through its fragile body. Anya felt the faint vibration in her hands, a sign of life, however tenuous. Katerina stroked the calf's damp fur, her tear-filled eyes fixed on Anya, a mixture of gratitude and despair. "He needs strength, Anya," she whispered, her voice choked. The cold and fear almost took him. Boris, watching closely, brought more fur blankets, carefully wrapping the calf. Other villagers approached, their faces reflecting the same anxiety. Older women began preparing more infusions, the scent of herbs mingling with the icy air. Young men worked to mend the enclosure, their hammers echoing a somber rhythm in the morning. Anya, oblivious to the sounds, felt the village's energy, the collective effort. She knew that healing was a slow process, a battle of every heartbeat. Her eyes moved to Lyra's cabin, where the light was still faint, a constant reminder of her reason for being. Anya moved to another calf, this one even weaker, lying in the snow, its dull eyes barely opened. The huntress knelt, touching the animal's icy muzzle. The absence of vibration was almost as strong as its presence. She felt the urgency, time slipping like sand through her fingers. With a decisive gesture, she indicated to Boris to bring a brazier closer so the heat could penetrate the small bodies. Boris, without hesitation, ran to fetch the brazier from the communal cabin, his determination overcoming his weariness. Katerina, seeing the gravity of the situation, began to mobilize the other women, asking them to bring more blankets and to pray silently, their prayers weaving an invisible net of hope. Anya, while waiting for the brazier, began to massage the weakest calf's legs, trying to reactivate circulation. Her calloused, strong fingers worked with surprising delicacy. She imagined life flowing from her hands into the animal, a transfer of her own resilience. The tundra was cruel, but it also taught persistence. Every fiber of her being cried out for Lyra, for a future where her granddaughter could feel the sun's warmth and the security of a healthy herd. It was a love that transcended darkness and silence, a force that propelled her to defy the impossible. Boris returned, panting, with the smoking brazier. The heat began to radiate, melting the surrounding snow and bringing visible relief to the animals. Anya nodded in thanks, her eyes conveying deep gratitude. She continued her work, alternating between massage and administering the herbs, while the other villagers followed her example, caring for the calves with touching dedication. The scent of smoke and herbs mingled in the air, an aroma of healing and hope. The village, which had faced the fury of the wolves, now united against life's fragility, each contributing what they could. Anya's hands were a balm, her presence a beacon. The sun rose higher, tinting the sky a pale blue, but the cold persisted, a constant reminder of the battle. Anya felt a slight vibration in the weakest calf's body, an almost imperceptible sign that life was fighting to remain. A small sigh escaped the animal's lips, and its eyes, previously dull, showed a faint glimmer. Katerina, who was watching, let out a sob of relief, covering her mouth with her hands. Boris smiled, a tired but hopeful smile. The victory against the wolves had been silent, but the struggle to heal the village was a symphony of gestures and emotions, where every small improvement was a triumph. A testament to the unwavering strength of the human spirit and the connection to the life around them. Anya knew the path was long, but hope had been reborn. Anya, warmed by the small victory, continued to massage the weakest calf. She felt the vibration of life, now stronger, pulsing beneath her hands. The animal, though fragile, seemed less tense, relaxing under her firm and gentle touch. Katerina, in silent prayer, watched Anya, her eyes reflecting the faith the huntress inspired. Boris moved among the other calves, applying blankets and infusions. The village, previously paralyzed, now buzzed with renewed energy. Anya knew that one calf did not represent the entire herd. Many animals still struggled, weakened by tremors and refusal to drink. She stood up, her knees protesting, walking slowly. Her eyes, which saw the world in profound silence, were her ears, catching every nuance of suffering. She noticed a calf further away, huddled against the fence, its fur bristling and eyes fixed on emptiness. The vibration of its body was almost non-existent, a tenuous thread of life on the verge of breaking. With a gesture, Anya called Katerina and Boris, pointing to the calf. Concern spread across their faces. It was the youngest of the herd, born weeks ago, and the terror of the night had struck it cruelly. Katerina knelt, trying to stroke the animal, but it recoiled, emitting a faint whimper that Anya felt as a pang in her chest. Boris, his voice choked, suggested it might be too late. He's not responding, Anya. It seems life has already abandoned him. Anya, however, did not give up. Her deafness, which deprived her of the sounds of hopelessness, made her immune to surrender. She felt the small spark of life still flickering in the calf. Carefully, she picked up the animal in her arms, feeling its light and fragile weight. The brazier's heat was not enough. It needed a more intimate and constant warmth. With a determined look, she indicated Lyra's cabin to Katerina. Katerina understood immediately. Lyra's cabin, with its wood-burning stove and constant warmth for Lyra, was the warmest and safest place. It was a risk to move the calf, but the chance of saving it was greater there. With Boris's help, Anya carried the calf, wrapping it in a thick fur blanket. The villagers watched in silence, with hope and fear. Anya's gesture, taking the calf to Lyra's sanctuary, was a symbol of her unwavering faith in life. Inside the cabin, Lyra still slept soundly, oblivious to the drama. Anya placed the calf near the stove, on a bed of soft furs. The warmth began to envelop the small body, and Anya felt a slight vibration of relaxation. She sat beside the animal, her hands on it, transmitting life. Katerina brought more herbs and water, while Boris adjusted the fire. The small cabin, Lyra's refuge, transformed into an improvised infirmary, a testament to the love that united them all. Anya watched the calf, her eyes fixed on every tremor, every breath. The path was long, the scars of the night deep, but hope, like the first rays of sun on the tundra, began to warm their hearts. She knew that true strength lay not only in warding off danger, but in nurturing life, rebuilding faith and resilience. Her love for Lyra, the light in her silent world, propelled her to fight for every heartbeat, for every breath of life, for a future. Her love for Lyra, the light in her silent world, propelled her to fight for every heartbeat, for every breath of life, for a future. Inside the cabin, the air was dense with the warmth of the wood-burning stove and the earthy aroma of the herbs Katerina had brought. Anya, sitting on the fur-covered floor, kept her hands on the weakest calf. The small body, wrapped in blankets, trembled less now, but the vibration Anya felt beneath her fingers was still fragile, a tenuous thread of life that demanded all her concentration. Her eyes, fixed on the animal, missed not a single movement, not a single change in its shallow breathing. Katerina, kneeling in front of Anya, prepared more infusion. Her movements were slow and deliberate, each gesture laden with a silent prayer. She watched Anya with deep admiration, the huntress's wisdom manifesting in every touch, every glance. Boris, meanwhile, adjusted the wood in the stove, ensuring the heat remained constant. He brought more furs, creating a cozy nest for the calf, while his eyes, once filled with despair, now gleamed with cautious hope. Anya felt Katerina and Boris's presence as silent support, an extension of her own will. Their unity in that small space was a shield against cold and uncertainty. Suddenly, Lyra, who was sleeping soundly in her fur bed, stirred. Her eyes, though blind, seemed to search for something in the air. She felt the change in the cabin's atmosphere, the strong scent of herbs, the more intense warmth, and a new vibration on the floor, different from her grandmother's or the adults. Lyra sat up, confused, and extended her small hands. Anya, noticing her granddaughter's awakening, moved gently closer to her, touching her face with tenderness. Lyra, feeling the familiar touch, smiled. Anya, with slow and clear gestures, indicated the calf. Lyra, curious, groped the air until she found the animal's warm, soft body. Her childish fingers traced its fur, feeling its faint breath. A small whimper escaped Lyra's lips, an expression of pure empathy. She leaned in, resting her head on the calf's flank, as if wanting to transmit her own warmth and comfort. Lyra's gesture touched Anya to the depths of her soul. It was her granddaughter's innocence, her ability to connect with life in its most vulnerable form, that renewed the huntress's strength. That calf was not just part of the herd, it was a symbol of everything Lyra represented, the fragility of life and the strength of love. Anya felt a wave of energy course through her exhausted body. The fight would continue, not just for survival, but for compassion, for the connection that united them all. Katerina and Boris watched the scene, their eyes brimming with tears. The small cabin, once a refuge, was now a sanctuary of healing and hope, where life struggled to rise again, propelled by the silent love of a grandmother and the innocent tenderness of a child. Outside, the other villagers continued to care for the rest of the cattle, the muffled sound of their voices and their movements vibrating through the ground, a constant reminder of the community that depended on that small life. Inside, a silent and desperate battle unfolded. Anya, her brow furrowed in concentration, felt the calf's life slipping through her fingers like fine sand carried by the wind. The vibration, once a tenuous thread of hope, was now almost imperceptible, a cold breath of wind about to dissipate completely. The small body, despite the soft blankets and the constant warmth of the wood-burning stove, seemed to shrink even further. Its muzzle pale, and its eyes, once faintly gleaming, now completely dull, almost lifeless. Katerina, her hands clasped in prayer and her lips moving in silent pleas, watched with a heavy heart. Silent tears streamed down her aged face, wetting the deep wrinkles. "He is leaving, Anya," she whispered, her voice broken by pain, though she knew Anya couldn't hear the words, only feel the anguish in her tone. "I feel there's nothing more to do. The spirits are calling him." Boris, beside the stove, turned his face away, unable to witness the imminent defeat. The hope that had ignited in his eyes now extinguished completely, replaced by a deep and resigned sadness. That calf, the youngest and most fragile of the herd, was a symbol of the village's struggle for survival, and losing it would be a blow too painful to bear. Lyra, sensing the drastic change in the cabin's energy, the heavy stillness, the vibrations of anguish from the adults, and above all, the absence of the small pulse of life she had previously felt in the calf, began to whimper softly. Her small fingers frantically groped the air, seeking the animal's warmth, but found only the growing cold emanating from its body. The girl, with the heightened sensitivity of one who does not see the world, perceived the absence of life settling in. Her cry, silent to Anya, was a pang in her grandmother's soul, a melody of despair she felt in every fiber of her being, an echo of the fear the tundra imposed. Anya, seeing Lyra's suffering, felt a silent fury ignite within her, a fire that burned against nature's injustice. She could not allow it, she could not lose, not to the cold, not to fear, not to the cruel indifference of the tundra. Lyra needed that calf, the life it represented, the promise of a future where hope blossomed even in the ice. With a determined and sudden movement, Anya gently but firmly pushed Katerina and Boris aside. Her eyes, which had witnessed death up close countless times and overcome it, now gleamed with a frightening intensity, an indomitable flame of pure will. She leaned over the calf, bringing her face close to its icy, inert muzzle. She closed her eyes, focusing all her attention on the last, almost non-existent, vibrations of life that still stubbornly persisted. She took a deep breath, the icy air filling her lungs with the promise of new strength, and then, in an act of deep ancestral connection, began to emit a low, guttural hum, a sound not meant to be heard by the ears, but felt deep within the body. It was a song of her people, a call to life, a wordless prayer she felt reverberate in her own bones and, she hoped, in those of the small animal, awakening its essence. She placed her open hands on the calf's chest, not just touching, but transmitting her own vital energy, her most intimate warmth, her unwavering will to live. Lyra, beside her, stopped crying. Her small fingers, with surprising intuition, found Anya's hands, and she too placed them on the calf, as if wanting to unite her childlike strength with her grandmother's, forming a circle of life. That innocent gesture, that union of three lives, the huntress, the child, and the calf, created an invisible bond, a current of love and resilience that defied death itself. Anya felt the energy flow, a warm river of hope trying to reanimate the small heart. Sweat streamed down her forehead. The effort was immense, but the image of Lyra, smiling and safe, was her inexhaustible fuel. Minutes that felt like hours dragged on in a tense silence, broken only by Anya's hum. Katerina and Boris, paralyzed by the scene, watched with their hearts pounding in their chests. Anya's hum continued, a constant vibration that filled the cabin, transforming it into a sanctuary of healing. Suddenly, a small tremor ran through the calf's body, an almost imperceptible movement, but one that Anya felt with the keenness of her senses. Her eyes opened, fixed on the animal. A deeper breath, a faint but undeniable sigh escaped its muzzle. The calf, with visible effort, opened its eyes, which now gleamed with a faint light. Life, defying darkness and cold, had found a way back. Lyra, sensing the change, let out a small cry of joy, her fingers squeezing Anya's hands. The small cabin, once a stage of despair, now radiated a silent miracle, a testament to the all-encompassing power of love, to the resilience that blossomed even in the frozen heart of Yakutia. Lyra, her face illuminated by a smile that Anya felt like a ray of sunshine, embraced the calf with the tenderness of a child finding a friend. The small life, now firmer, responded with a slight movement of its muzzle against Lyra's cheek. Katerina and Boris, witnesses to that silent miracle, fell to their knees, tears of relief streaming freely. Katerina sobbed, her hands covering her face, while Boris, his voice choked, murmured words of gratitude to the spirits of the tundra. The tension that had gripped their hearts for hours finally dissolved, replaced by an overwhelming wave of hope. Anya, exhausted but with her soul at peace, felt the vibration of Lyra's joy, the relief of Katerina and Boris. The calf, though still fragile, pulsed with renewed life beneath her hands. She knew the battle wasn't entirely won, but the hardest part was over. The small animal would need constant care, warmth, and nourishment, but the flame of life had been rekindled. With a serene look, Anya indicated to Katerina to continue with the herbal infusions, but now with less frequency, to allow the calf to recover gradually. Katerina, wiping away her tears, nodded with determination. Her movements, once hesitant, were now firm and full of purpose. She felt that the village had been granted a second chance, and Anya's wisdom was the beacon that guided them. Boris, meanwhile, began to rearrange the furs, ensuring the calf was as comfortable as possible, and adjusted the fire, keeping the cabin warm. That small space, which had been a stage of despair, now transformed into a sanctuary of healing and renewal. Anya stood up, her muscles protesting but her mind clear. Her eyes, which had seen life return, now turned to the world outside. Lyra's calf was a symbol, but the entire herd still needed attention. With slow and precise gestures, she indicated to Boris to gather the other men to reinforce the shelters and to Katerina to mobilize the women to continue caring for the other calves. The news of the weakest calf's recovery would spread like a whisper of hope, rekindling faith in every heart. The villagers, seeing Katerina and Boris emerge from the cabin with tired but genuine smiles, felt a collective relief. The news of the calf's improvement, conveyed by gestures and glances, brought new vigor. The work of caring for the cattle, which once seemed an arduous and endless task, now gained new meaning. They weren't just saving animals, they were saving themselves, their future, the promise that life would always find a way, even in the most relentless of tundras. Anya watched from afar, feeling the vibrations of renewed activity. The scent of smoke and the murmur of voices, though inaudible to her, were a symphony of life. Human connection, altruism, and overcoming adversity, values she had always cherished, were now stronger than ever. The village, though marked by trial, emerged more united, more resilient. The legend of Anya, the deaf huntress who felt the world in its depths, gained a new chapter, not just as a protector against predators, but as a guardian of life and hope. In the cabin, Lyra fell asleep again, the calf nestled beside her, a soft and constant warmth. Anya felt the peace emanating from that small miracle. Her love for Lyra, which had propelled her to defy the impossible, had been the key. True strength, she knew, lay not only in perfect senses, but in the purity of love and the indomitable will to protect. The village was safe, the herd was recovering, and the future, though still uncertain like the tundra, shone with the promise of a new dawn. The village was safe, the herd was recovering, and the future, though still uncertain like the tundra, shone with the promise of a new dawn. Weeks passed since the night the wolves besieged the village, and the small calf, saved by Anya and Lyra's love, had become a living symbol of resilience. Inside the cabin, the warmth of the wood-burning stove was constant, and the air carried a faint aroma of smoke and life. Lyra, now stronger and with rosy skin, spent hours sitting beside the calf, which had been named Aurora, a reminder of the new dawn it represented. Lyra's fingers traced the animal's soft fur, feeling each heartbeat, each breath, a silent melody that filled her world. Aurora, in turn, seemed to recognize the girl, responding to her touches with small movements of its muzzle and a comforting warmth. The connection between the two was palpable, a dance of innocence and survival that warmed Anya's soul. Anya watched her granddaughter with a soft smile that rarely adorned her lips. Her eyes, which once carried the intensity of the huntress, now reflected a deep peace. The fight for the calf's life had redefined her purpose. She was not just the protector against external threats, she was the guardian of hope, the weaver of a future where compassion and human connection flourished. Outside, life in the village pulsed with a new rhythm. The cattle shelters had been reinforced, the fences mended, and the herd, though still recovering from the trauma, showed clear signs of improvement. Katerina and Boris, tireless, led the efforts, their faces marked by weariness, but illuminated by renewed faith. The village women took turns caring for the weaker calves, applying Anya's herbal infusions and singing soft songs that, though inaudible to the huntress, she felt as vibrations of unity and healing. Anya walked among the villagers, her steps firm in the snow. Her deafness, once seen as a weakness, was now a source of strength, allowing her to feel the world in its depths, to perceive the vibrations of every heart, of every living being. She saw the gratitude in Katerina's eyes, Boris's silent admiration, the contained joy of mothers seeing their children playing near the herd. The village had become an extension of her own family, and her love for Lyra, which propelled her to defy the impossible, had expanded to embrace everyone. On a clear afternoon, under Yakutia's pale sun, Lyra emerged from the cabin, guided by Anya's hand. Aurora, now stronger, followed closely, its young hooves treading the snow. Lyra, with a radiant smile, reached out to the sun, feeling its warmth on her skin, a promise of longer, less icy days. Anya touched her granddaughter's face, feeling the pure joy that emanated from her. Life, in its most vulnerable and most resilient form, had triumphed. The legend of Anya, the deaf huntress who felt the world in its depths, was no longer just about the battle against the wolves. It was about the ability to nurture life, to rebuild faith and resilience, to find true strength in the purity of love and the indomitable will to protect. The village, the tundra, Lyra, and Aurora, all were witnesses that even in the frozen heart of Yakutia, hope, like the first rays of sun, would always find a way to shine. The new dawn Anya had envisioned stretched for months, transforming into a brief, vibrant summer, and then, once again, into a winter that, though relentless, seemed less daunting. The village, once a cluster of isolated cabins in the white vastness, now pulsed with renewed energy, a living testament to the resilience Anya had instilled. The story of the deaf huntress, of the 700 wolves, and of the calf Aurora, saved by the union of grandmother and granddaughter, was no longer just an event. It had become a legend, whispered around the campfires, a song of courage and love that echoed deeply in the icy snows. Anya, maintaining her usual silence, was now regarded with even greater reverence. Her ancestral wisdom, once consulted in times of hunting and danger, was now sought for all facets of life. She taught, without words, the importance of feeling the ground, of reading the subtle signs of wind and snow, and above all of listening to each other's hearts. Her hands, once firm on the bough, now guided young mothers in preparing healing herbs, or indicated to the men the best places to reinforce fences, always with a gaze that conveyed more than 1,000 words. Lyra grew with Aurora as her faithful shadow. The calf, now a young and robust animal, never strayed from the girl. Its hooves beat rhythmically on the snow, a sound Lyra felt as an extension of her own being. Together, they explored the village surroundings, Lyra guided by Aurora's vibrations and Anya's steady hand. Lyra's blindness, like Anya's deafness, was not a limitation, but a door to a deeper perception of the world. She felt the texture of the snow, the sun's warmth, the scent of the distant forest, and her grandmother's constant and comforting presence. Katerina and Boris, witnesses to the miracle in Lyra's cabin, became the main guardians of the new tradition. They organized patrols, ensured strong shelters, and provided the necessary care for each calf. Their faces, once marked by worry, now displayed serenity, forged in overcoming adversity. The village had learned that true security came not only from weapons and traps, but from unity, compassion, and unwavering belief in the power of life. The villagers, inspired by Anya, developed new forms of connection. Women wove thick blankets for the cattle, men shared hunting and building techniques, and children learned to respect the tundra, not as an enemy, but as a home that demanded care and understanding. Winter, with its biting winds and extreme temperatures, was still a battle, but now faced together with stronger hearts and unwavering faith. Anya, in her rare hours of solitude, sat near the fire, feeling the warmth in her wrinkled hands. She thought of Lyra, of Aurora, of the village that had been reborn. The tundra, with its austere beauty and overwhelming power, continued to be a challenge, but also a teacher. It had taught that life was a fragile gift, but that love, resilience, and human connection could transform it into an unbreakable force. The legend of Anya was not just about surviving, it was about thriving, finding light even in the deepest darkness, and about the eternal promise that, as long as there was love, there would always be a new dawn, a future to be built, a silent testament to the indomitable will to protect.